Story 1. The sheer joy when I received several links to places selling excess alcohol returned to breweries from pubs during lockdown. I remember when I got 240 cans of Guinness for £120. What a time to be alive. Story 2. The extra time and energy I had every day. I have never been as healthy as I was during lockdown because I had time to go for a long walk a couple of times every week after work. Story 3. Not seeing the streets constantly clogged with traffic, strangers not getting way too close to me for no reason, and people not being forced to work at the office for jobs that do not require it. At least the prevalence of hand sanitizer has somewhat stayed. Story 4. The peace and quiet on the streets and not having sick people coughing near me at the supermarket. Now people get COVID-19, the flu, or whatever, cough and sneeze with open mouths everywhere and do not care about contaminating others. Story 5. For those saying working from home, we are having it written into laws here that will allow us, if applicable, to do so. It just makes sense. Employees are happier. There is less wear on roads, cars, and fuel use, and it is cheaper for everyone. Those who cannot work from home also benefit from fewer people on the roads, faster city traffic, and easier booking of appointments as many are more likely to be around. It is a win for almost everyone. Australia, by the way, I work from home 3 to 4 days a week and have for at least 3 years now. Story 6. Nobody was driving. I'd like to go back to that. The people in my neighborhood all still took walks around the area in the evenings, and even though we stayed on opposite sides of the road, we were still quite social. I actually got to know many more people in the area during that time. Then, things started to go back to normal. Someone was speeding up the road in their car and ran over my cat, who had gotten used to the idea of no cars on the roads. I'll never forget that evening. One of my neighbors brought our dead cat to our front door, a victim of a hit and run. They rang the doorbell. Rigor mortis was just starting to set in. He was my 13-year-old daughter's best friend. Especially during the coronavirus period. She burst into tears. We all did, but the memory of that night is indelibly etched into my mind. I'd rather go back to the time when people only drove when absolutely necessary. Working from home was a blessing and should be encouraged, not discouraged. Story 7. The forced working from home requirements freed up an astonishing amount of time. Now we have hybrid work. For me, going in for just 1 day causes a huge unnecessary loss of time. Story 8. Nothing. The lockdown honestly was one of the worst periods of my life, and I would be happy to never experience that again. I remember in our school the classes were split into Group A and Group B to reduce contact. In my group, there were many girls and barely any of my friends. Technically, that was the perfect setup for me to make a move, which of course I didn't because I was a socially anxious 16-year-old. But I wouldn't mind that opportunity again. As for full lockdown days, absolutely not. I want to avoid that entirely. Story 9. That moment when you can wake up without an alarm clock, make coffee, start the day slowly, and no one is pressuring you from work or social media. No rush, no chaos, just time for yourself. I wish this peaceful freedom would never end. Story 10. Being able to do absolutely nothing for long periods of time and have rest days every day without needing an excuse. I miss spending each day binge-watching shows without a worry. Story 11. The unemployment benefits I was receiving continued even though I had just switched to a full-time job. I was still on the payroll of the previous job that was affected, and the Department of Labor approved it. I was not penalized during the following tax season. In fact, I received more because unemployment checks were not supposed to be taxed, but they were. I was earning a significant amount. Story 12. I was an essential employee at the time. I will take more of those stimulus checks. Not for all of you, of course, just for me. I do not want to cause inflation. Story 13. Clean public restrooms. Business establishments actually sanitized and maintained their facilities during the coronavirus pandemic. Now that things have returned to normal, it is back to dodging clogged toilets and floating waste again. No one knows the meaning of a mercy flush anymore. Toilet paper and hand towels are no longer a given. It is a wonder we do not have more public health issues. Story 14. None for me. I hated it. Not having to deal with the traffic was nice, but it was no big deal because there was nowhere to go. Story 15. My online shopping arrived in carrier bags. I picked them up out of the crate and brought them in. The delivery driver was on his way in 2 minutes. Story 16. Being able to stream new movie releases at home is convenient. I do not see new movies anymore because I have no interest in going to a poor quality theater, and I usually forget about them by the time I can watch them at home. Story 17. Going on drives, maintaining social distancing, staying at my parents' property for a month at a time, and still getting paid. Story 18. The money I had, along with all that freedom and activities I was doing, felt like summer holidays during my high school years. Story 19. Honestly, I kind of missed the quiet streets and slower pace during the lockdown. Life felt more peaceful and less rushed. Story 20. Working from home with no visitors and only being able to go to parks, pools, and beaches within 15 kilometers, I discovered so much cool stuff. Best life ever. Take me back. Story 21. People became less busy and had more time for one another, even if only virtually. I missed the slower pace of life and having more time with my friends. Life is now moving extremely fast, and I have much less time for my friends, and they have less time for me. Story 22. No traffic and work from home. My companies seem to think there is some kind of magic in making people sit in an office all day. The lights trigger migraines, and it is apparently necessary that I sit in a refrigerator. I feel like an animal placed in the wrong environment at the zoo. Story 23. If you were sick, your employer wanted you to stay home. Now we expect employees to come to work sick. Story 24. Remote work. Now everyone wants you in the office, and getting a single day per week at home is like saying, look at our amazing policy. Story 25. Work is not penalizing you for not showing up. I took a whole month off. I did absolutely nothing, and it was exactly what I needed. Story 26. The daily family cooking challenges revealed my father's secret pancake recipe, which was a lockdown masterpiece. Story 27. Having to sit down and watch some Netflix shows with my roommates. Honestly, we were so invested in multiple shows and planned our afternoons and nights on what to watch next, what to snack on while watching, and how the whole night was going to go. Good days. Story 28. Hanging out with my youngest brother every day was special. We were close but born 8 years apart, so I never really got to hang with him as peers growing up. When the lockdown began, we both temporarily moved back in with our parents for the first couple of months. We relaxed every day, having smoke sessions, shooting hoops all day, and watching movies and television together all night. We even ate mushrooms together one day. I really got to know him during those months, and I missed the time I spent with him. Now, we live in different states and work, so it's hard to find quality time together. Story 29. The paycheck. I made a lot of money during the coronavirus pandemic because my business grew instead of closing. These days, I take home 40% less. Story 30. My hours at work. We worked at the place for about 5 hours per day, 2 or 3 days per week depending on the rotation, and got paid for 40 hours. Story 31. My wife and I both work with the public, and my children go to public schools. We battle strep throat once a year and get colds and similar illnesses like most people. I appreciated being able to call into work without anyone giving me a hard time. I work in a field where the prevailing attitude is to work no matter what, or you are considered weak. It was so nice to be able to use my own sick time and not receive negative responses from coworkers when I was home with a fever. Story 32. The stricter rules about the number of people allowed in grocery stores were beneficial. It was pleasant not being in overly crowded stores. Story 33. The closed borders were not because of immigration or anything. I just really enjoyed that almost 2-year period when I did not have to interact with my mother-in-law. Story 34. Learning new skills out of boredom. I taught myself how to cook more meals and how to make bread. I also learned how to cross-stitch. Story 35. Working remotely 100%. If we had embraced that, a significant amount of money could have been saved by my workplace ending leases and consolidating into a single office building for presentations, meetings, and occasional check-ins. A no-effort savings of multiple millions a year. Story 36. The only difference before, during, and after was the movies coming out. Everything else stayed the same. Story 37. A lot of museums, musicians, historical societies, and organizations were doing daily live streaming on YouTube and other sites. I know the American Banjo Museum would do a live stream almost daily, including tours, concerts, and lectures. That has all stopped. Story 38. Everything was much slower paced, and businesses and services were more accommodating to personal schedules. Story 39. The meticulous cleaning of shopping carts. Every store thoroughly cleaned them as if they were decontaminating from a nuclear accident. Now they have returned to letting them get dirty again. Story 40. The prevalence of remote jobs led to many significant benefits. If you had marketable skills, it was also the most lucrative time to change jobs in years. High-paying jobs from all over the country suddenly became an option and were ready to pay well. This situation was negatively impacted by many irresponsible people, mostly those holding multiple jobs or parents who did not understand that they are not being paid to watch their children during work hours. I am not referring to occasional interruptions by a child, but frequent absences to attend to parental duties regularly enough that human resources had to get involved because the employee did not want to hire a babysitter. This persisted well past the point when children were always home and sitters were unavailable. We are talking about employees paid well above the amount needed to afford babysitters. I managed a team for the first few years, and these were the two issues I had to deal with constantly. Story 41. Not having to spend holidays with family. My wife and I very much enjoyed holidays by ourselves doing our own activities. Story 42. I miss when it was acceptable to run away from people in the grocery store. I still get all bristly when people get too close to me. Story 43. Playing Warzone with friends. Many people's lives slowed down, and we were able to reconnect. Story 44. Please keep your distance from me when standing in line. Regardless of how close you stand, the line will move at the same speed. I do not need to feel your breath on the back of my neck so you can feel like you are getting to the till quicker. Please step back. Story 45. Time with friends and family. Mostly via Discord with friends, we would stream shows to watch together or play games most nights. Having my spouse and child at home for remote learning and remote working was a great time, to be honest. Story 46. Social distancing and frequent cleaning and disinfecting routines. I am not a germaphobe, but the number of people who do not wash their hands and walk around mouth breathing is appalling to me. Story 47. A television show that comes out about roughly the same time as the current events, which feels soothing. Not like The Handmaid's Tale, but more like Station 11. Story 48. Small funerals. I hate Black South African funerals. You have to prepare meals for mourners from the day people find out about the death until the day of the funeral. On the funeral day, you have to go all out, often having to cater to over 200 people with food and drinks. During the coronavirus pandemic, funerals were restricted to 50 people. I had hoped that it would not change after lockdown. Story 49. Low gas prices and nothing else. The whole situation was bad for my children and basically made them addicted to being online. Previously, they were allowed some online time on weekends, but the lockdown made it all day with reasons like needing to do homework online. Story 50. I am a teacher. At the very beginning of the lockdown, we were highly respected. Then, we quickly became seen as villains, evil people who were clearly trying to indoctrinate children. We were labeled lazy and greedy. The complete turnaround was surprising. I just wish we could regain some of that respect because we are not the villains in this story that people like to believe we are. Story 51. This is a minor inconvenience, but as someone with significant social anxiety, the fact that the top restaurants in my area, including some Michelin star places, were forced to offer carryout, and that some of the top sushi restaurants were providing omakase to go was an absolute godsend. I wish they still offered something like this once a month or so. Story 52. Isolating. I quite enjoyed lockdown. Normally, the world is far too crowded and loud for my liking. During lockdown, it seemed like the streets were empty wherever we went. No noise and no one else around but me and my little family. Working from home, there was no pressure to go anywhere, no need to see people, and no requirement to wear a bra or even proper pants during the daytime. There were no expectations for people to do anything other than peacefully stay in their houses, stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy the unexpected time at home with loved ones. It was great. Story 53. In the United Kingdom, Parliament has an old tradition of shouting at people in the House of Commons when they make speeches or ask questions. It is the most annoying and embarrassing aspect of what is supposed to be a prestigious chamber of the country. During lockdown, everyone worked from home, so Parliament was conducted over Teams and Zoom. This meant there was no shouting, no people trying to talk over each other. It was properly moderated, and people could speak without interruptions. It was a breath of fresh air. Then lockdown ended, and they returned to the House of Commons and started shouting like donkeys again. Respectful civil discourse and mature debate lasted about 6 months. Some traditions should be left in the past. Story 54. Reddit Public Access Network live streaming on Reddit. Scrolling as usual, you can find countless people streaming random hobbies, live music, cooking, peaceful walks around their town, and more. Story 55. My relationship with my wife improved significantly. For the first time in 10 years, we spent the days together, had lunch, and exercised together. We were the healthiest we had ever been. Story 56. The part where I was home, receiving unemployment benefits for a job that should have been paying me that amount the whole time, and putting my children to bed every night with multiple stories. Story 57. Living at home with my parents and brother, having fun cooking together and making enjoyable meals, spending a lot of time together. We have not all lived together since the lockdown. Story 58. My grandmother's life? She did not die from coronavirus disease. She was just really old. She made it to 91 though. They had to send her home from work when coronavirus disease hit. She was working full-time still at that point. Anyway, that time was really difficult in nearly every way, so I will pass on repeating it. Story 59. Our company did all the printing in our state for coronavirus disease. I did not get to enjoy anything during the lockdown. It was business as usual, but there was less traffic. Story 60. How everyone was open to seeing and being themselves. I feel the acceptance of queer people and just small unrepresented groups really shined. Story 61. The sex. Once my wife and I were working from morning, we would be intimate all day. Empty nesters, so no children to interrupt the fun. Story 62. The 8 p.m. howl. Everyone in my city and the surrounding cities would stop what they were doing, go to their doors or windows and howl like wolves. So cool. Story 63. One-way aisles in the grocery store. I do not know how much it helped at all to stop spreading any disease, and I am sure having fewer people in the store overall helped too. But it just seemed easier to flow through the store when people not paying attention going in the opposite direction were removed from the equation. Story 64. The feeling of we are all in this together was kind of nice, even if it was tinged heavily with fear and worry. Story 65. All the people stayed inside. New Hampshire did not prosecute if you broke quarantine. I broke it every day, and it was really nice walking around and driving in public without a bunch of impatient or obnoxious people buzzing around me everywhere. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.